Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming along to today's meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. I'm going to turn. Item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms go off, we'll treat it for real. And if people can evacuate the building out of these doors of the chamber, down the front steps, and out the front door, meet across the road by the Yorkshire Bank. If anybody needs any assistance, please let us know. We'll make sure that's there for you. It's also a timely reminder to ask people to either turn your mobile phones off or to put them on silent. We also do record these meetings as a Borough Council, and they get posted out onto a YouTube site later on. Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is to receive apologies for absence. None? Ian Lloyd, thank you. Anybody else? No? Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of January. Are you happy that I sign those?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Condacor.
Chair, I left the meeting before the private matter because I wasn't allowed to speak. So the minutes make out I was there for the public session.
Are members happy that I sign the the minutes as a true record?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other interests in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct. None? Item number 5 are members' declarations of contact. If I can just say on item number 1, which is the Royal Oak, I have been in a couple of meetings with residents of Collycroft Residents Association when this has been discussed. And in relation to item 3, I received a letter yesterday from a member of the public which I've passed on to the Planning Department. Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, I just with the Galley Common application, but I didn't express any opinion as to how I was going to vote, but just explained it was a freestanding application on which people needed to make their own comments.
Where the public have indicated a desire to speak. If I can just run through that process for those people that haven't been here before. The officer will present the report. Following on from that, I'll take the speakers as listed. Under the Constitution, you're allowed 3 minutes to make your point. Once the egg timer goes off for that 3 minutes, I will stop you from speaking. However, members of the committee may want to seek any points of clarification, but only clarification from anything that you've said during those 3 minutes. Again, following on from that, the officer may wish to come back to maybe add something or make a response. If not, then it'll be over to the committee to get something moved and seconded to enable debate to take place. And then they will debate the matter and hopefully make a decision tonight. I say hopefully, they don't all the time, as is the case on our first one today, which was deferred for a site visit. But mostly, in most cases, we make the decision on the day. Okay, so item number 1, which was our site visit, the Royal Oak pub, Nuneaton Road, Bedworth.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the retention of the children's play equipment and the continued use of the land as a pub beer garden at the Royal Oak Pub, Nuneaton Road, Bedworth. Letters and a petition of support have been received as detailed on the planning agenda. The site has already been changed to a pub beer garden and the play equipment already sited on the land. Members visited the site earlier today in order to assess the proposal's impact on the residential amenity of surrounding properties. In terms of the impact on residential amenity, it is considered that outdoor noise created by the proposal will carry much further than the internal kinds of noise associated with a public house than with a beer garden. There are residential properties in close proximity to the site, the nearest ones being 4 and 6 Royal Oak Yard and 63 Nuneaton Road. Number 4 Royal Oak Yard immediately adjoins the eastern boundary of the site, and their private amenity space adjoins the beer garden with a close boarded fence. 6 Royal Oak Yard is beyond this. Even though the latest application has been accompanied by acoustic screening details, environmental health officers have objected, as they did on the previously refused scheme, on the grounds of noise, as it is considered that the noise and disturbance from the beer garden would be too significant given the likely levels of noise and the unsociable hours in which the worst of the noise would likely be. Environmental health has stated that while the acoustic screening could help noise spill at ground level, this would do little to help the nearby 2-storey properties whose living accommodation is split over 2 floors, or to the garden space. In terms of visual amenity, the beer garden is to the rear of the existing pub, but is accessible from Royal Oak Yard. There is a close boarded fence along this boundary. It is not considered that the beer garden or play equipment have any detrimental impact on visual amenity. There are no objections in relation to highway safety. In conclusion, the recommendation is therefore one of refusal on the grounds of the impact on the residential amenity of surrounding properties as detailed on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Does that make a difference with this little mic on? Doesn't it? Yeah, okay. I'll just leave this on then. Okay. Mr. Robert Williams.
Thank you for the committee for their recent visit to my client's property. Further to the last discussion that was held here, I've been given a copy of the relevant documentation from your environmental health representative, which is the sole objective to this project. Within this document, it is agreed that the current adjacent occupiers do not object, but the writers of the report suggest this could change if properties are sold and new owners arrive. On this point, it is a misdirection by the officer concerned, as the NPPF, National Planning Policy, recognises that some businesses required to expand can create extra noise. However, it goes on to say that businesses should not be stifled by change of use of land nearby which have occurred after the business is established. In this case, the pub was established well before the adjacent developments. I would also like to bring to your attention the viability issue of the public house, and I've provided accounts which show that the public house is only just viable, and the loss of their garden will have a detrimental effect upon the current operations. I therefore ask that you give consideration to approving the development as per the actual drawings that you have before you. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Pomfret.
Information about the target clientele who you're expecting to be using the beer garden, because apart from children's play equipment, there's quite a lot of facilities like beer tables and so on.
People that would be asked to go there are families, because it's not being used currently as a family pub. It's been more of a pub that people have dropped into. The clientele has been completely changed since the new owners, and they have brought about changes to try and attract families. They also carried out a survey before they did anything on this site, and the survey showed that the local people wanted somewhere where they could come and have a drink with their children within the area without them, so children could play safely. And this is what brought this particular project forward, because the survey showed it was missing. So the target's going to be families, and there are easily conditions that could restrict the use of this site that could be added to it. And those are conditions which could affect the time period. In other words, the use of it could be limited to 7, 8 o'clock, whatever the committee felt was viable. And also the use of it could be limited to its current use, which is children's play area. We couldn't sort of say that people couldn't drink outside, but other uses would be well restricted by condition.
Thank you.
Are there any other points of clarification? Councillor Tromans.
About conditions, aren't there licensing conditions already? Have you not got licensing approval to use it as a beer garden yet? And did they not only put any hours of operation restriction?
My client here will have to answer the hours restrictions, but certainly, yes, on the approval from the licensing, they did restrict the hours, I think, till...
I restricted the hours to 9 o'clock for
Till
children.
9 o'clock for children, yes.
That was my choice, actually. I think children should go and be in bed by 9 o'clock. They shouldn't be running around pub gardens.
Okay.
So that's on the actual condition of the licensor. Thank you.
The points of clarification? No. In that case, Darren, anything else you need to come back on? No? Okay then, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation as printed, which is to refuse planning permission for the reasons printed? Is that seconded? Seconded. Any member? Councillor Condacourt.
Always look to see how many people object to things, and always have the principle, if no one's objecting or very few people are objecting, why is planning trying to stop people doing things? The issue seems to be, what if someone moves next to the pub? And there is always got to be an element of buyer beware. If you move next to a pub, you should actually have a look and see what type of pub it is. Yeah, families playing outside. And it seems totally crazy that environmental health are failing to protect us from all sorts of things, but actually children playing seems to be getting their objections up. Really, children's playing is a really healthy, natural thing to happen. And I do not see why we're trying to put a pub out of business. I get the fact that nighttime noise is a nuisance, and a 9 o'clock condition seems more than adequate for the outdoor areas near residential areas, and I do not see why this should be refused.
Councillor Pomfret, did you indicate? Sorry,
I haven't indicated yet.
Okay. Councillor Gran.
Completely agree with what was said before. I don't see any problems with this whatsoever. I've only had positive feedback from the few people who have brought this up in conversation before. I think it's good that the pub's trying to bring in new clientele, trying to have more family-orientated business. They've got good play equipment, and I think it's good to have a beer garden in this part of town. I just don't see a problem with it. I don't think that the council should be penalising the pub. And we know it's possible to put in conditions to satisfy people regarding noise at night, so I think should go straight ahead with it, really. So I don't see a reason to object at all.
Tony Lloyd, did you put your hand up? I'm sorry, I couldn't...
Yeah.
No. Yeah, Councillor Lloyd.
My hand up yet, Chair.
Councillor Pomfret.
It's trying to put anybody out of business. What we're trying to do, at least I'm trying to do, is to make sure that the users of the pub and the neighbours, I'm a bit amazed that they haven't put in some form of objection, have happy lives. I am concerned that 9 o'clock seems quite late, especially if there are going to be customers in the garden at 9 o'clock who aren't children, and there mightn't even be any children, they're just adults. So I would be very interested in seeing what restrictions we can make to bring that 9 o'clock a bit earlier, and I don't suppose there's any restrictions that can be made on who actually uses the garden at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tony Lloyd.
Most times, okay, the boozer generally opens about 5 and 7 o'clock in the evenings, and we want it closed at 7:30 instead of 9 o'clock. What's the point of having a garden? So I don't quite understand, but that, people have the right to talk how they feel, whatever. What you see there with the equipment is what is on there. If you go less than a quarter of a mile up the road on the right-hand side, you see a boozer there called a grip. It's absolutely jam full till about 10, 11 o'clock at night with children and everybody playing, and a lot more equipment. If you look, I went on the site grid, and I moved the site grid. Only 3 of us turned up actually, but I went on there, and the first house past the boozer is not occupied. It's not, and the building next to that is not occupied. It's an hairdresser's. The house, the other side, as you look to the right of that, is an entrance all the way through up to the road at the top. It used to be my ward years and years ago, and I did make a comment on the site visit that it took us nearly 30 odd years to see it in such a good condition, with the roads tarmacked, the fencing all around. Beyond that, where you can see there is a wood fence. Then it's nicely tarmacked. Then there's another wood fence round the houses, which is quite a distance away. Quite a distance away. Then you've got a car park that's tucked there. There is no, and then the house is beyond that car park. So you are considerable away, and there is one house. There's one house to me. What there is directly. I think it's the White House you can see there now. That is right close to the fence. And to me, having the and by the way, the people down that end, they work with the boozer at the moment because they bring all the dustbins through there and straight through it out for our river. They work early in the morning, so they are working with the neighbours and the shops down there to keep things moving down there, which is quite good. The area looking at it is really in an excellent condition, neat, clean, and really is smart. And the fence is very high. It really is high to that. And when you've got the seating along there, if I take my children or grandchildren out, if you go out in the evening and it's a beautiful evening, most people will not sit and you've got a couple of children that can play there. You'll sit outside and enjoy the sun, enjoy a drink with friends and everything. And I think there's about 6 or 7 tables along there, which is really not going to do a great deal of harm to anybody. And I'm quite thinking as well, how many people or how many families are suddenly going to turn up there to use that? But I'm sure the owner wants a lot to come. But this is an excellent idea. I really don't understand why we've got an initial turn down when we've only got one. And okay, please, I'm not being cruel. We do have one house only that really would be affected, and that's the white one. The rest, we don't have any houses. And across the road, we have a road where you can drive through, tarmac, and then 2 more fences. So I puzzle me. This one did puzzle me because of the amount of space round it and everything. And I don't care what you say. Okay, children can be noisy, but not to that extent to hurt anybody. And I'm just surprised that we've got it in front of us as a rejection when you've just less than half a mile up the road, you've got one that size that's jam full day and night of the Corner Drift. But there you are. We shouldn't set precedent, shouldn't we? Should be free to everybody. But this is a nice area, Chair. You've seen it. It's in excellent condition, and I have the planning given permission.
Thank you.
I'll be quite honest, I'd have voted for this last time. I made that fairly clear last time. I do know it, I know it very well. I know the garden and the area around there. We have a lot of pubs in the Nuneaton and Bedworth area that are closing, and we do need to be seen to be doing whatever we can to soften that blow on the pub trade. So we're going to end up with none. Some people may say that's a good thing. I don't think it is, but that's just me. The particular areas, as I say, I know it very well. The question really to Catherine is, if we voted this through, if it went through, do environmental health, because I understand about protecting the one property that the boundaries on, because it might not be them people that own it in the future or rent it in the future. It could be anybody. So I do understand that, but if we did vote this through, does environmental health have the ability to enforce if it gets out of hand?
If there was a statutory noise nuisance from it, they would have the power under the Environmental Protection Act to take action.
Chair, can I just... Chair, I mean, for myself, I would vote this one through because the ability is there to protect any future resident with a noise nuisance. We've seen it happen on a number of occasions throughout the borough. And for the sake of the pub trade, I think we ought to be seen to be doing whatever we can within, obviously, planning legislation.
The way the planning officer spoke is a balanced one, even for the officers. I do have to say I don't go along with the conspiracy theories outlined that we want to close the pubs down. Clearly, we don't want to do. We want to have, some pub economy left in Bedworth and in Nuneaton and around the borough. It is a balanced one because that pub never had a garden at the back. It's been acquired over recent years, so that problem has never been there before. Perceived problem. But I say it's a balanced one, and my thinking on it, and having looked at the licensing conditions that are on, because officers do tell us as well that we shouldn't put attach conditions that could already be enforced by others. And there is a condition on the new application, on the new granted licensing application, that says there'll be no children in the garden after 9 o'clock. It's a little bit unfortunate. It doesn't say, the beer garden will be covered by the existing licence, which on, I think, one particular is still at 12:30 at night. But I think, as Councillor Ian Lloyd has pointed out, any nuisance that's caused can give reason to local residents and indeed the police or anybody else to ask for a review of the licence anyway. So I think maybe that kind of thing is covered. So in saying that, I'm not going to bring you back in, Councillor Condon.
So I want clarification what you said.
Sorry?
I just wanted to clarify what you said.
What I said?
Yeah, about the licensing conditions.
Yeah, what do you want? Well, ask me the question and I'll see if I can answer it.
Is there a condition to say no events outside, like a barbecue or concert or something?
My understanding is the pub didn't have a condition before about children, so children weren't allowed on the premises. That has now been granted, so they can be in the pub or in the garden until 9 o'clock at night. But I don't believe there's other conditions that licensing have attached. But we're a planning committee. They would deal with that. We'll deal with what we've got in front of us. Okay, I think we've sort of got round and finally understood what that's about. It was moved and seconded to enable the debate to take place. The officer's recommendation is to refuse planning permission. All those in favour of that? All those against? And abstentions? Okay, that is not refused. If from the chair then, can I move approval of the application? Is that seconded?
Yeah.
All those in favour of approval? That's unanimous, thank you. That's approved. Okay, if we can take on to item number 3. Item number 3, which is the Plough Hill Golf Centre And I should have made members aware that we do have Ben Sim from County Highways in attendance if we need any questions answering. Darren? Sorry, are you ready?
Thank you, Chair. This application is an outline application for residential development for up to 300 houses, including open space, the relocation of the existing nursery, access and associated works with demolition of the existing buildings. This is an outline application to include access only, with all other matters such as layout, scale, appearance and landscaping reserved for consideration at a later date. The site is located off Plough Hill Road in Galley Common, Nuneaton. The land comprises a number of arable fields and a golf centre containing a driving range and a small golf course. Plough Hill Road forms the western boundary of the arable fields and part of the golf centre. Where the parcel of arable fields is set back from Plough Hill Road, its western boundaries are formed by mature hedgerows and dense vegetation. The eastern boundary of these fields is defined by the local wildlife site, Anstey Mineral Line and the Shuntings, and the northern and southern boundaries of both parcels of land are bordered by hedgerows. An existing stream flows along part of the southern boundary of the golf centre's driving range and crosses into the golf course. A small residential group of properties is to the west of the golf centre and adjoins the northern end of the arable fields. The topography of the site is generally flat to the south, rising steadily north, with the highest point present in the northern segment of the parcel of arable fields. The previous application was considered by committee on the 1st of November 2016, but was refused on highway safety and sustainability reasons. However, these reasons were subsequently rescinded at the last committee on the 31st of January this year. The key issues to consider on the assessment of this application are the principle of the development and sustainable development, housing need and land supply, landscape character, highway safety, flooding, and any relevant planning obligations. National guidance in the form of the NPPF gives a presumption in favour of sustainable development. In broad terms, this means that the application should be approved providing that it is in accordance with the development plan and other policies within the NPPF, unless material considerations or adverse impacts indicate otherwise. In regard to housing need, the NPPF states that there is a need for councils to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing land plus a 20% buffer where there is a persistent under-delivery. Currently, this council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing land, and because of this, the NPPF states that housing supply policies are out of date. With this in mind, both the area of restraint policy and the countryside, EMV 2 and 3 respectively, of the Saved Local Plan 2006 are no longer considered up to date. On the issue of landscape character, the site scored a 7 in the Site Analysis and Selection 2012, where a score of less than 11 means that the site is less constrained for development. The nearby housing development approved in 2015 under permission 033156, further along Plough Hill Road, further reduces this score to a 6, as fewer points are attributed to land where permissions are granted nearby. It is considered that the landscape character is not so unique or special so as to warrant refusal on these grounds. In regard to biodiversity, the site includes 2 potential local wildlife sites. The applicant is willing to pay a financial contribution towards off-site biodiversity offsetting, which will be secured through a legal agreement. Between the determination of the previous application and the submission of this current application, the applicant has worked on and submitted a new transport assessment, which attempts to show more clearly that the proposal will not cause any severe impact on highway safety when considered in conjunction with conditions and highway improvements. A traffic calming scheme along Coleshill Road and Plough Hill Road on the approach to the junction is proposed. This would slow down vehicle speeds whilst increasing the number of gaps which vehicles could utilise when exiting Plough Hill Road. Additionally, members will likely recall that at the last committee on the 31st of January this year, it was voted by members to remove the reasons for refusal on the previous application, and therefore the council would have no evidence to give at the appeal lodged by the applicants to the refusal of the previous scheme. Conditions will be added to any approval to ensure that works are carried out prior to the occupation of any dwellings on the site. Warwickshire County Council Highways Authority are content with the scheme on this basis and consider that the scheme will actually result in betterment of the operation of that junction. Apologies, didn't read that one. In regard to the impact on flood risk, there is a watercourse running partly through the site and at the boundary site boundary, which is a tributary of the Barpool Brook. The site is located within Flood Zone 1, the lowest risk, and a flood risk assessment has been provided. As can be seen from the addendum to the agenda, Warwickshire County Council Flood Risk Team have no objection to the development on flood risk grounds. The applicant has agreed to pay all of the planning obligations requested, and this includes just over £332,000 for play and open space, over £1.5 million for education, just over £6,500 for libraries, over £37,000 for police, £894,000 for highway improvements for both bus and cycling improvements, and the applicant has agreed to pay for off-site biodiversity offsetting, and has indicated they're content to pay that. It is considered, therefore, that the proposal represents sustainable development, and as such, it is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and a legal agreement as set out on the agenda and addendum.
Okay, thank you, Darren. County Councillor Philip Johnson.
I think I don't need to say too much more about this, except to remind members what we said last time when we managed to persuade the committee to overturn the recommendation. And with great respect to my colleague from County Highways, I have to say I think his advice in this case is wrong. The model doesn't take account of the special conditions for this area. I remind members that although there's been 106 money said to be put into education, including Gallicommon Infant School, that school can't be expanded. There is no room to do so, and it's full at the moment. So every school-aged child that lives on this development in the future will generate a car journey along Plough Hill Road and through the Plough Hill Road Coleshill junction at peak time, to a junction which most authorities admit is operating at near capacity. There is still, in my mind, a conflict between the amelioration measures planned here, which are supposed to slow down the traffic approaching the Plough Hill Road, Coleshill Road junction, and the conditions that were approved for a previous application next door to this, which are speeding up the approach of traffic up Plough Hill Road onto that junction. We're unable to get verification from County Highways, that we've tried in the last 2 weeks, as to whether those conditions on that previous planning application can in fact be enforced. There's a lot of doubt about what's going on there. Too much with what's going on here, in my view, to approve that application, and I would be prepared to argue that in another place if required. I think it's very sad that an application which was approved in public before has now had that reversed in a private session. And I know that there are technical reasons why that should take place, but in terms of transparency for members of the public, that doesn't look very good for the operation of what's going on here. There's a lot of pressure being applied by the developer to get this application approved. You've had the threat that it's going to go to appeal and that you're going to lose if that happens. I think what's going on here, the applicant is talking about building houses. What they're in fact doing is destroying democracy, and the people of Gallicommon are going to be the ones that lose out. I would urge you to consider the reasons why you turned down the previous application and consider doing that again tonight. Thank you.
In the interest of clarity and transparency, and officers will tell me if I've got this wrong, you did say that we reversed our previous decision in private. We did not. We removed the condition on that. We are now in open session where we're considering it. It wasn't reversed at all. Are there any points of clarification? Councillor Condicorn.
Yeah, two said in another place will argue it. So I assume you're talking there, you're going to put a case to the inquiry. And secondly, you mentioned the model early on in your 3 minutes. Was that the transport model which you disagree with? And is that about the modal shift and how people travel?
Modal shift will take place, and you and I both know that's the case. But it's also the fact that the model assumes that a housing development of this size, occupied by this statistical section of population, will generate a certain number of car movements. My argument is that because there are no school facilities locally and these people are not going to walk along Plough Hill Road, an unsafe existence where there's no footway. They're all going to go by car, and they're all got to go through that junction.
To clarification, was it, yeah?
My question was the second one that was asked there, so I've actually had the answer. Thank you very much.
Okay. No. Mr. Sean Chowdy.
I'm here again to object to the application before you. You have before you an identical application. It was accepted in the previous application that the Plough Hill Road, Coleshill Road junction is operating at overcapacity, and it should be remembered that this is before the Gladman development, the Cartwrights development have finished. It was accepted that any short-term minor investment in public transport could not guarantee long-term longevity. It was also shown that there is already a shortfall and a strain on public services in the area. This planning application will only exacerbate that problem. It was highlighted in the last application that at peak times, the traffic tailbacks go all the way up to the Plough pub. Once again, I would ask you to defer this application so a site visit could be made at peak hours. It was heard from Warwickshire County Council Highways officer that Warwickshire Highways would have preferred the number of houses cut back to 250, but this was not done by the developers. The appeals inspector has also shown great insight on the acceptability of this application by deciding to hold a public inquiry. I'd now like to come to the fundamentals of the refused decision that was given by the majority of the planning committee. The committee obviously felt strong enough to refuse the application first time round. I remember being present at a planning committee hearing not long ago. The planning committee had before it refused an application against the planning officer's recommendation of approval. The applicant then resubmitted the application, once again with a recommendation for approval. I remember the response was summed up by a member of the planning committee, respected Councillor Tony Lloyd, who stated he was angry that the applicant had wasted the committee's time by bringing an identical application before it. The application was once again refused. I hope the committee will follow suit by showing their displeasure at an identical application being brought before it and refusing this application today. I would also like to highlight to the committee that I've read somewhere that this application is being considered by the MPCU. This application may be called in. Maybe this could be clarified. Therefore, a decision to this application cannot be issued anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not aware of that, but officers can respond in a moment. Are there any points of clarification? No, thank you. Mr. Michael Ross.
Thank you, Chairman. As has been set out, a similar proposal was brought before your committee last year and was a scheme that was refused solely on highway grounds. I listened. We have gone away and thought carefully about how we may seek to address your committee's concerns. We have gone all the way back to the Gladman's application immediately to the south of this site and reviewed in detail the highway mitigation works proposed as part of that development. We have ensured that our proposed off-site mitigation sits hand in hand with the previously approved highway works to ensure a joined-up approach to dealing with transport issues in this part of the borough. We have also revisited our trip rate assumptions, our junction capacity analysis, and liaised further with your officers and with the Highway Authority. We remain committed to a contribution of £450,000 towards improving bus provision, which will not just benefit future occupiers of this site, but will benefit all users of the number 18 service. And we are separately also committed to improvements to cycle infrastructure between the site, your town centre, Bermuda Park and Hartshill School. In terms of sustainable transport modes, we have revisited the distances to a range of facilities within walking and cycling distance of this site, including walking the actual routes to check for adequacy and reasonableness as alternatives to the car. It is my respectful submissions to this committee that there are a range of facilities within walking and cycling distance to the site, reducing reliance on the car. All other aspects raised by the application are covered in detail in the officer report before you, and I would not wish to take up committee time repeating these points. My final comment would be with reference to your emerging borough plan. Consideration was previously given as to whether this site should be brought forward as an allocation. The assessment was at a time before the housing to the south of the site was approved. And we have therefore respectfully asked your policy officers to consider whether this site should be an allocation going forward. And we continue to work constructively and closely with your officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Councillor Condicorn.
Yeah, improvement to the number 18 bus service, which currently runs once an hour and doesn't run at weekend, doesn't run on Sundays. Can you actually explain how that 400,000 you're claiming you're going to spend on it is going to, what improved service you're going to get? Are you going to get a half-hourly service? Are you going to get a Sunday service? And how's that going to be maintained in the future?
Think of how best that money is provided to that service is something that the Highway Authority need to guide us on. We are content to be led by them. If that means a 20-minute service Monday to Friday, for example, and no service on a Sunday, then we're content with that. If that means a half-hourly service and a service on a Sunday, then we will be led by that. So we're committed to the money. We see it will make tangible improvements. The detail is for the Highway Authority to assist us with.
Councillor Copeland.
Thank you. I could ask you a question about, you mentioned about cycling and cycle there. About cycling, you didn't actually mention this specific point, but I do want to ask a question on it. Just that on page 47, and it may not be your wording or what you use, but if you could clarify, it talks about using an average cycle speed of 15 miles per hour. Is that a figure that you have used?
It isn't a figure I've used. I'm perhaps not the best person to comment because I am quite a keen road cyclist. So I'm not a proportionate person because I would cycle marginally quicker than that speed. I recognise that less able cyclists would cycle at a lower speed. The guidance that we have...
If I could just... If it would
forgive me.
Well, my question is it a figure that you have supplied that then has been put in the report? And I'm getting the impression it's not.
Forgive me, it isn't. It's your officer's position.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Councillor Gissain.
You've walked some of these routes to make sure you know that they're walkable distances. Obviously, in real life terms, I'm guessing you didn't walk out with a couple of toddlers and walk from Plough Hill Road to Hartshill in the morning. Rushing to get to school for 9 o'clock. But can you tell me where you did walk and why you believe these are walkable distances for families to get to school in the morning, please?
First thing to say, in terms of the guidance which is set out within the report, the general threshold is 2 kilometres for walking. That's set out in the IHT guidance, and it was also, it's a standard within Manual for Streets and in the old PPG 13. Now that's based on an assumed 3 mile an hour walking speed. I recognise that is a speed that you wouldn't necessarily walk at with toddlers. I have a 7-month-old and a 3-year-old, and we walk considerably slower than that. So I understand the issue. The point is that that's a guidance. Some people will walk quicker than that, perhaps 4 miles an hour. Some will walk slower. There are, as the report sets out, 6 schools within a reasonable walking distance, Galley Common School being 300 metres from the site. So even if you're walking at a much slower speed with children, 300 metres is well below the 2 kilometre guidance.
Thank you. Councillor Condicle, you had a further point of clarification?
Yes, and the paperwork, it just says you're going to resurface the shuntings, which is unlit at the moment. So is it anything more than resurfacing the shuntings? Is it actually going to put a route through to the town centre?
Well, one of the advantages of this site is it sits cheek by jowl with the shuntings, which is the National Cycle Route 52, as I recall. I may have that figure wrong. There's a fairly substantial sum of money that's going into that, and I would hope that money will go beyond simply surfacing it. I'm trying to find the figure whilst we're talking, but it's hundreds of thousands of pounds that are going into that cycle route. So I would hope it's more than resurfacing. It should go much further than that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything at this stage? We haven't opened the debate yet, but okay.
And want to deal with cycling. Well, both of them are down to the responsibility of Warwickshire County Council as the Highway Authority and Home Control of Public Transport Authority and cycling to identify how those funds are spent from the applicants. We work with them, but it's down to the county council to identify where that fund is spent to provide the required betterment to enable that development to come forward. So it isn't their responsibility. They're providing the funding based on our advice, but we'll actually implement it.
Once again, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation as printed, which is to grant delegated authorities the head of development control to grant planning permission? We've got that at them other words, but they're in front of you. Is that seconded?
Yes.
Any member? Councillor Gissane.
Thank you. Last time I haven't really changed, so neither has the application. But we're still not addressing the issues. In real life terms, obviously, hopefully some people cycle to work and cycle around the area, but you're going to ruin the lives of people living in this area. And Galley Common's a lovely village. I live there. I've done for a few months now, and I'm hoping my child goes to Galley Common School and so on. But in real life terms, you're talking people can drive to Hartsell and drive elsewhere in the mornings. Well, they're not going to walk with young children. Galley Common School is oversubscribed. The only way they can expand is by taking over the daycare within Galley Common School, within the building. And if they do that, then the daycare's gone. It's been there for, I think, 15 years and provides a brilliant service. And as well as, obviously, the road issues, we're talking about houses straight next to this and down the road, and I think nearly 700 houses in the next 5 years should be built if Cartwrights get permission to build the next 50 behind what they're doing at the minute, behind the zoo. And all of this, we're talking on a road that's been there since Galley Common was tiny, and there was nothing there, just Plough Hill Road. We're not doing anything with it. The improvements to the Gladman sites haven't been put through. If you talk to Warwickshire Highways, I've spoken to them a few times, no one can tell you that anything's been put in stone, that anything is happening. All these roadworks that should be happening haven't happened yet, and the sites should be the work should be starting on the site in April. Obviously, these should be all done before anyone moves into these. I'm not saying that's your fault. That's Gladman's. It's a separate issue. When you're going to put all these houses there and all these cars coming out, there's no jobs in the area. It's not like we're next to a massive industrial estate or somewhere where people can work. Hopefully, some people will cycle to work and will walk around the area. We're still talking about massive amounts of traffic going through this area with nowhere to go. And if they go the other way down Hickman Road, you'll come out on Arthur Tunnel Road and go through Ansley, which isn't great in the mornings, or go through Park Lane, which is a single-track road. So all of these issues, I think, on this, we need to refuse this and fix it, or just scrap it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any Councillor Condacor?
Thank you very much, Chair. Expanding and in Leicestershire, and they have these things called sustainable urban extensions, and this is the sort of thing that the national planning policy should be talking about in terms of sustainable development. And they're places where they're building railway stations or they're putting high-frequency bus services on. They're not places where we end up with a bus service that doesn't run on Sundays, a bus service that is outside the fare zone for the town. If you go to Galley Common, it's £6 because it's not in the £4 in travel zone. You are going out into the countryside going to Galley Common. And it is fundamental that we can't turn down sustainable development, but it's also fundamental that it should be sustainable. An absolute key to sustainability is to put the stuff in to get that modal shift to actually make it a sustainable urban extension. None of that is being done. We've not got the local school provision to keep the local school children in Galley Common. If you're talking about what will be probably 700 houses, you should be talking about a new primary school equivalent. A lot of places, that sort of expansion, you're talking about building a sustainable urban extension. We're not doing that. This is why it should go to the inquiry and we have a proper debate, proper discussion with the experts, rather than be bullied into approving this scheme, which has very little merit in terms of sustainability. In the particulars, Sunday bus service is absolutely essential for somewhere so far out. The only Sunday bus service at the moment up there is the 48 to Aviston that goes through Chapel End and across through Hartsell. That involves climbing quite a significant hill on a Sunday to get anywhere. So that's not really a sustainable thing. We've got some money for bus service, but we're not quite sure what's going to happen. Well, Wellington got 400,000 for bus service. That hasn't happened. And 400,000 doesn't buy you anything of a bus service. In terms of cycling, the department here, in terms of playing open spaces, want to resurface the shuntings and rebuild it as a proper, it's like a motorway standard cycle route. It'll be absolutely superb, but then it will end. If you try and go from the end of the shuntings or across Whitford Park, you just end up in industrial estates or the outer bits of town. anyone on this committee or the planners, I invite them to cycle to Galley Common following these mythical routes. Sustrans want to build a cycle route out that way. They've even given it a number. It is not a cycle route that is there yet. It is an idea to go out from the Nuneaton, up through Fife Street, across the rec ground, over Hillary Road, which isn't a particularly nice road to cycle on, and then across all sorts of non-drop curbs. Then you hit a good bit of cycling across the Whittleford Park, or if you go the other way, the shuntings. They just end. We have possibilities in the future. There's talk of a Galley Common railway station. That is a £14 million railway station. If these developers want a sustainable urban extension out that way, they should be contributing to the £14 million, because no one's got that money yet. This is an unsustainable development at the moment. And then we talk about the 5-year land supply. I always think we haven't got a 5-year land supply because houses are not selling. The rate at which the other application in Plough Hill Road, they estimate will build 35 houses in 5 years. That shows we've got an issue, not with having enough planning permission, but actually having enough sites that are viable. If this site came forward, what will it do? Will that mean both sites will sell 17.5 houses a year? Yeah, we are trying to build too far in an area that's got too little money and with too many transport problems. Yeah, we have a borough plan. We will argue over that later. But it doesn't include this site because it is a crazy long way out of town and it is not a sustainable urban extension. If you look at what they're doing in Hinckley and other places, they are starting to plan sustainable urban extensions. They're doing the sort of thing the National Planning Policy is talking about. They're talking about jobs, schools, and actually putting all things together so we get less transport. This afternoon, well, this lunchtime, my wife got hit on her bike on the A5. Nothing serious. We went to hospital, checked her out. That is a painted line on a pavement. Yeah, cars come across and there's accidents. We, if we're doing proper stuff, need to actually put safe, proper cycle routes all the way from the Nuneaton Town Centre to the end of the shuntings. Then you can start to encourage people to cycle. If we want to use people to use the bus services, we need Galley Common to be in the Nuneaton and Bedford bus zone. So it's £4 from Galley Common day ticket, not £6.10. We've got an awful lot of things we need to do, and this is a really dreadful place to build. I get criticised whenever I say building near me is better than building Galley Common, because they say, you're saying you want to build near me. I don't. But Galley Common really is a long way, and I challenge any member of this committee or any planning officer to cycle there or go there on public transport and then come back again, having to wait an hour for a bus.
I'm not a statistician like others, but I have been a councillor for a long time, some might say for too long. But the one thing that I have always taken cognizance of is local knowledge. And when I hear local councillors telling me that this is not an ideal application, then I will listen to them. On the addendum that we have, apart from the previous objections that are listed in the report, it seems that, if I've read it right, we have 22 new objections in from neighbours of the scheme. I hear the comments that have been made about schools in the area, getting to and from the schools, and the fact that the schools may not be adequate to take in the pupils from a development of this size. I'm not a highways engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but I do find it difficult to understand how slowing down traffic on those two main roads are actually going to stop problems at a junction. I accept that that is the official view. I do have a problem with working that through my mind, Chair. Thank you very much.
Tony Lloyd.
Today, that I shouldn't think many have listened to me, but I've got one member of the public actually listened to what I actually said. So thank you. So I do say things and they actually write it down. But if on the question of I said that why should we submit another planning committee on a similar note, if they hadn't done and kept the original one, then the houses would have been built by now. I don't agree with comments being made that it's not sustainable up there. It is. It's just it's in our borough, it's just up the road. The recycle, it's quite remarkable at all. We're on about schools, we're on about all the transport, we're on all about, and I think every speaker today, so far, other than the gentleman councillor there, is a county councillor. They are the people who vote and get things done when a development like this, and they work with their officers to try and get developments and things in to sustain. We need houses. But don't make no mistake about it. People don't like us saying it, that I'll tell you what, you can, this one, if they go to appeal, we can end up with the amount of houses we've got and we need, and it can take it. Make no mistake up there, the land there where it is can take it. Have you noticed everybody who speaks is always talks about one area, the junction. Warwickshire County Council does not have an objection on any highway issue. We always talk about that, but we never ever talk about when you come out, you turn left. And you go up there, you can go up there, come down the bottom road here, the island's at the top, you can go Anstey, you can go all over the place. The road, there is another way out, you turn left. Instead of going down, turning down. And it's quite remarkable. I just heard the developer talking and the county council officer saying they're going to sit down and come together to talk to, to try and sort out the bus routes, to sort out the Sunday bus route, to put a cycle track in to get people in and out. And yet the county councillors don't seem to be on the same wavelength as their own officers and the people who are doing the work up there. They might be the time of year, but they don't seem to be listening. They can't. Their own highway folks say we can do it, we will do it, and we're going to do it. So it's got to be sustainable. That's what is your county council officer will be sitting there telling this committee clearly that the highways is not there, we disagree with it, it's unsafe and we can't deliver what you're requesting as a planning. He ain't, he's told us he can. He told us he can. It is sustainable and we need the houses. And if you actually go up there, and I've been up there, and I don't live there, I've worked up there and walked around, actually where they build the houses and all of, there's still many, many fields and open areas and woods around the area after it's been developed. And the actually developer and everybody, the people who want to do it, if you read their wording on their chair, and we have mentioned somebody's thrown in about their animals and all, but they're going to put so much money in there to help and develop with the rangers and every way to have the environment and all the animals and everything up there to try and develop the area as well for the community. We need a community in Nuneaton and Bedworth. We need people to come in. We want to develop our area. Whatever you like, and I shall, whatever you like, and I'm not going to get political, but whatever you like, this government is hell-bent on building houses in areas. They keep hitting at the borough plan. Some of the green areas in this borough plan is because we were told to put the green areas have got to go in to be considered by the inspector. And he will make the decision or whatever. But they hit it on because he's political. But please, the county councillors and all you keep on about schools. Oh, what else do you put down here? I've got it down. County schools, unsustainable. None of them. You've got all these county councillors doing it and everything, and then they come to where we want to develop in our area, which can take it, we object. Go to county. There's your officer. Go down with him and talk to him and get the thing solved and get this borough up and running and get people in that we need. This is a sustainable thing, and committee, don't let political or sentimentality come into it, because, as I say, if that officer sat there from Warwickshire told us no, I wouldn't be talking out, but he hasn't. He said he will do it with that gentleman over there and they will put things together. We always get the cycle route no matter what we do. We always get that argument for certain councillors, but you have to listen because they have a democracy to do it. But committee, don't just turn it down for the sake of turning it down. This can be done, it is sustainable, and it can be developed, and we can bring people into our borough.
And is there anybody that wishes to speak that hasn't already done so? Councillor Beaumont.
Sitting here, reading the report, looking at the contributions the developer's making, looking at the conclusion which the officers are drawing about the sustainability of this proposal, and the last sentence is virtually, there are no material reasons to refuse planning permission for the proposed development. Now, I've got the difficulty of, if I listen to the pleas of others, outside of the information placed in this report, and look for a reason to reject this development, I've got to find one. And that is part of the statements the officers are making, which I can't really speak against. That's their conclusion from a professional point of view about the proposals. We've got a county officer here who's done the work on the highways issues and has withdrawn objections to the previous proposal, and this proposal is an attempt to soften that blow, if you like, and have the officer draw a different conclusion to the one which he had for the previous report. So I think to make progress with this, I'd like to see someone who would make a proposal about rejection which makes sense, because this report makes sense, and I've got great difficulty in refusing it.
Councillor Copeland.
Well, it's quite fortunate that I'm following on from the councillor, because he said a lot of where I was heading, if you like, because I put my cards on the table and I always look at everyone on its own. We've got the same application as comment last time, and we know what happened, and comments have been made about that. I voted in favour of it the last time, and it'd be remiss of me not to speak now. It's been mentioned about the modelling being wrong and there being special conditions here, and of course local knowledge and whatever. That's fine to a certain level, but I need evidence. That's what I have to base my decision and where my vote swings, if you like. I need hard evidence, and my problem is I'm not actually hearing that to make me go against what's on the paperwork, and then basically where I went last time, if you like. So I don't have that evidence, and although it's been proposed and seconded, what's here, if anyone wants to go a different way, and I'm suspecting there are members on the committee that want to come to a different conclusion, then they're going to have to put something down, as the member in front of me says, for me to base that on, with my view, with some evidence as well. That's what I use to make a decision.
Thank you. No, you've had a good spell. Is there anything you wanted to come back on? Ben? No? Darren? No? The recommendation has been moved and seconded. It's the one that's printed on your agenda. And I'll go through it so everybody is absolutely clear on it. The period for consultation expires on the 23rd of February 2017. Subject to no issues being raised by that date, Planning Committee is recommended to grant delegated authority to the Head of Development Control to grant planning permission, subject to a legal agreement relating to financial contributions towards bus service improvements, cycling infrastructure, play and open space, police infrastructure, education, libraries, 25% affordable dwellings, biodiversity offsetting, and the conditions printed. And just to make sure I've got things right, this is an outline application, so the detail would come back to us if it was approved. All those in favour of the recommendation? And against? And abstentions? So, you agree it's casting vote, yeah? The recommendation is approved. Thank you. Okay, if we can move on to item number 4, please. Regent Street, Nuneaton.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the demolition of the existing garages on Regent Street, Nuneaton, and for the erection of 6 apartments on that site. The site is a narrow site on the corner of Regent Street and Orchard Street, Nuneaton. The existing garages do not appear well used, but the parking spaces in front of them are. The garages have wooden doors with corrugated concrete roofs. Also on site, on the corner, are some brick-built structures. The site is adjacent to the 2-storey houses on Orchard Street. The main use of the area is residential. There are also parking restrictions in the form of double yellow lines on the road. The key issues to assess in the determination of this planning application are the principle of the development, the current situation of housing need and supply, the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, and the impact on highway safety. The land is not designated for any particular use within the saved policies of the Local Plan 2006, nor is it earmarked for any particular use in the emerging borough plan. There are a good number of residential houses surrounding the site, so the use would not be considered to be contrasting. The principle of a residential use on this site is therefore considered acceptable. In relation to housing need and land supply, it is now well documented that the Council cannot demonstrate a 5-year land supply of deliverable housing land. And on this basis, the erection of 6 units of residential accommodation will help in a small way to reach this target. The site itself is located in a sustainable area, being very close to the Nuneaton town centre and within walking distance of the Nuneaton bus station and the railway station. In regard to the impact on residential amenity, the guidance within the residential design guide is met across most of the site. There is one potential shortfall in relation to number 2 Orchard Street, however. There is a rear-facing window at first floor on number 2 Orchard Street. It is not clear if this is a habitable room or not, but as it is not obscure glazed, it is assumed to be habitable. The proposed development very slightly infringes a 45-degree line drawn from the centre of this window by less than half a metre, and this is at a distance of 9.5 metres in separation. On this basis, it is considered that the infringement is not so significant as to refuse the application on these grounds. Numbers 86 and 88 Wheat Street are located approximately 28 metres away from the end elevation of the proposed development. Windows on the ground floor and first floor of the proposed development are therefore in excess of the required 20-metre separation distance standard for window to windows. But there is a window at second floor level in the new proposal, serving a bedroom overlooking the rear of these properties, and this is 2 metres short of the required 30-metre separation distance for new windows that are a storey higher than existing. Amended plans have been submitted, however, that show that this window will now be obscure glazed and will have a limited opener, which restricts the amount that the window can be opened during normal circumstances. This is therefore acceptable in accordance with the residential design guide. In regard to the impact on visual amenity, the ridge height of the proposed development is only half a metre above the ridge height of the neighbouring property. And as the property is designed with a gable roof, the development with a gable roof similar to the surrounding properties, there is a 3-storey property on the corner of Cooper Street opposite the site, which is very similar to the proposed end elevations of the development, and this therefore sets a precedent for the development. Materials are to be brick and tile, with brick headers and stone sills around the windows, and a bay window on the front elevation facing Orchard Street. This is reflective of the character of the area. It is considered, therefore, that the proposal would have no significant detrimental impact on the visual amenity of the area. In regard to the impact on highway safety, Warwickshire County Council Highways Authority were consulted on this application and have lodged an objection on the grounds of insufficient car parking. There are five car parking spaces proposed for 6 apartments, and it is considered that this is sufficient given the sustainable location of the proposal on the edge of town centre, close to the Nuneaton railway station, the bus station and other shops and facilities. The Highways Authority stated that they may be willing to remove their objections subject to a condition which will require the new residents not to apply for car parking passes for the parking restrictions already on the street. However, it is considered that this condition will be unreasonable and unenforceable and would not meet the tests of conditions set out in the MPPG. It is considered, therefore, that there will be no severe impact on highway safety caused by the proposal. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. John Parnell.
Yes, I actually live in Regent Street and I object because we have parking problems there already. If you look at Regent Street, Orchard Street and Cooper Street, there are 53 properties there with only 49 available parking spaces. Bear in mind 15 of these are not reserved for residents, meaning there are only 35 spaces reserved for residents. I'm not going to go into the charges, even though they have gone from 10 to 15 and are, I believe, going up to £25. That doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to pay for a parking permit. But what we're looking at here is the loss of 10 garages and 10 parking spaces. There was a house on this site, which I believe was knocked down in the 1950s to build garages. If it was thought then that we needed more parking spaces, why now, when there are more cars on the road, is it deemed okay to get rid of all of that potential parking? I agree not all of the garages are used to house a vehicle, but many of the spaces in front are, and there are regularly 2 large vans there, and there is not room in this area. We've already heard that there are hundreds of houses being built around Nuneaton, down Weddington Way, up the Long Shoot. We've heard about another application just in the last few minutes. And I do not see how building 6 apartments is going to be that good a reflection on the housing for the whole of the borough when it's going to cause more parking problems. Since the parking for residents came in, they put in extra yellow lines, which means less parking again. It still doesn't stop people parking on the yellow lines, that's another point. And we also have an area next to the Attack Snooker, which is being used, I believe, not legally for parking, and that will probably be developed sometime, and those vehicles will not have anywhere to go. So the fact that we do not have enough parking spaces for the properties that are there, and the fact that these properties could possibly apply for parking permits, and it is very possible some of these apartments will have more than one vehicle to them, because quite often a couple will need a vehicle each, I would like to object strongly on the fact that we do not have enough parking in this area of the town already, and I believe the borough plan will mean that another car park where the old police station was will be going, meaning even less parking. We already have enough parking problems. I do not want this to go ahead because quite often we cannot park until after 10:30, 11 o'clock at night when everyone's gone from the Attack. And during the day, as I say, there's a lot of unreserved spaces that can be used by anyone. We do not have enough parking. That is my objection. It's health and safety. I think the Highways Authority should have objected on this point more strongly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Councillor Condical.
Families with 2 cars. You do understand if someone's got 2 cars, they're more likely to live somewhere with parking, and this is actually going to be more likely somewhere where young people who don't drive will live.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
The people who are likely to occupy this flat are likely to people who are young who don't have lots of cars. Do you get that? Yeah, there's a mix.
Okay, but even so, we will... And that parking space is in regular use at the moment, and there are not enough parking spaces in that area. In fact, 86 and 88 Week Street, because of the current parking permits that we have, the spaces for parking, they struggle to use their garage space anyway.
Okay, thank you. I think you've answered his question. Could you knock your speaker off, please? Clarification? No? Darren, anything arising from that? No? In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation which is to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement and the conditions printed? Is that seconded? I think Councillor Condacore was seconding it. I'm not sure whether he was waving at me or seconding it. Any member? Councillor Condacore.
The railway line we go past quite a lot, and a lot of these flats are really close into the railway line and actually don't have that many cars attached to them because the bigger families with lots of cars naturally do not want to buy a flat or rent a flat that is so got such parking problems. And actually I think one of the issues quite often is actually somewhere to store a bicycle. And I don't know if this has got some, because it's only got 5 parking spaces for 6 flats, if it does actually have a cycling provision for safe storage of bicycles on the ground floor. Because one issue we have with a lot of these taller buildings is people end up storing bicycles in corridors, which then cause fire problems. So I'd be quite happy to support this if there's somewhere safe for things like bicycles, so we can actually get the sort of people who don't have cars to actually live near the railway station and bus station.
Thank you. And point out the 5 car parking spaces on there.
So, do you see the hand?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. So there's 1.
And then the gaps in between the turning in and for access.
There's sections for manoeuvring, reversing, and so on. Yeah.
And the bin. Okay. Right, that makes it much clearer for me. Thank you very much. From my perspective, I hear what Councillor Condacore said. We've come across a lot of applications for the town centre in the past where they are for bed sits or 1-bed flats, and because they are purely for rental and they tend to be short-term, the likely tenants don't drive, don't have vehicles. It's not significantly adding to the road traffic. This one's a bit more balanced because they're 2-bed apartments, and I understand that some of them will be sold. So it's just such a shame that there isn't 6 parking spaces. Was there any discussions with the developer about trying to fit another one in?
I believe, but I assume it didn't pan out that way. There obviously wasn't space, or they weren't willing to. I'm not sure what the outcome was, but 5 is what they're proposing, and we feel it's acceptable. Oh, sorry.
I haven't got to remember I've got this thing on now. Councillor Ian... Oh, sorry, no, Councillor Pomfret.
Thank you. There's obviously a parking issue already with or without these flats in that area. My memory of the area is that the roads are quite narrow anyway, and also that many of the existing houses have very little or perhaps no front garden. Another factor concerns me, therefore, is, I think it's called massing or whatever. That is an open space, sort of on that little crossroads there, in a very densely packed area. I'm wondering what this is going to look like to the existing residents. Mention was made of number 2 Orchard Street and so on. I'm a bit concerned that this is going to be rather too chunky, where the existing houses are quite small. I did hear that they don't go more than a metre above the ridge line, or was it 1 metre less? But I'm still concerned that this development is going to remove a bit of sort of openness in the environment and could land up with things quite close to the pavement, because I noticed on the map, on the plan, that the flats do come to within a metre or so of the back edge of the pavement. Is that correct?
Is that the relationship between the existing and the proposed?
Yeah, this is the street scene from Orchard Street as it would be. So obviously the side it's the side elevation that would face onto Orchard Street, but it has been designed to sort of try and blend in with the street scene and have an active frontage. So that's hopefully helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There's 6 units. The doors on the front, they go to the units upstairs, is that correct? And to get into the one down, I didn't quite understand how the staircases work.
There's doors on both sides, it would appear. So there's doors on the front and the rear. And so it looks like the rear will serve the upstairs and the front will serve downstairs by the looks of it. If that makes sense.
Councillor Ian Lloyd.
Firstly, I mean, I know Mr Parnell from my mayoral days, who helped me during my mayoral year. Do I have to declare an interest on that?
It would be safer to.
Sorry?
It would be safer to.
Okay. I'll declare that interest then and I'll leave.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that it opens a little bit of can of worms because I now realise that I know John from other things, but I think if anything, it's only a personal interest because a lot of us as members will have come across him. Is there any other member? Councillor Beaumont.
Vote for the officer's recommendation on this. Being so close to the town, I think it does lend itself to waiving of any consideration of street parking. If I lived in one of the flats, the first thing I'd buy is a folding bike, and I find them excellent. I had one up until about 2 years ago, and then my daughter-in-law took it off me, and she's been using it ever since on and off trains. But I do find that sort of bike is now a very reasonable price. It doesn't present any difficulties, and it does give you a lot of flexibility in dealing with these issues. So I think car parking is of a lesser consideration. It's still taken into account for the apartments as far as could be managed within the site. So I'm inclined to support the application.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really balanced one, bearing in mind we've got the highway objection, and I kind of understand it in a street like that, but we always live in the hope that people are going to live in those locations and be walking to the station or to the bus station or whatever. So it is a really balanced one for me anyway. Anyway, the recommendation as printed, which is to grant planning permission, has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? And against? And abstentions? Okay, that's approved. Which then takes us on to item number 5, which is 70A Riversley Road.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use of part of a single-storey attached garage at 70A Riversley Road for the use as a treatment room for physiotherapy patients. The site is an existing garage space which is currently vacant at ground floor. The ground floor of the property is split into two, with one half being accessed through an up and over garage door. The other half is currently accessed via a pair of double doors. With the half accessed by double doors, there is a partitioned area which is intended to be used as a treatment room. The two garages are accessed directly from the pavement of Riversley Road and are lit internally by two plastic roof lights which are visible on the flat roof over the two garages. The vehicular access to these garages is marked off with an I bar on the road to discourage blocking the access with parked cars. The living accommodation partially above the garage is accessed via the side door of 70A Riversley Road. The applicant has indicated that they intend to live in the accommodation over the downstairs garage. A recent planning application has been made for residential extensions to the living accommodation. However, this is not part of this planning application. The road is characterised by predominantly traditional, semi-detached houses in a few different styles as one travels down the road. The road features a lot of on-street parking. During the planning officer's site visit at around 3 p.m. on a weekday, there were some gaps for parking along the road, and gaps were filled and created fairly regularly. The key issues to consider in this application are the principle of the use, the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, and the impact on highway safety. In regard to the principle of the use, the proposal is for a change of use of part of the small garage at the ground floor of 70A Riversley Road. Given that the use would be very small scale and not much beyond the level which would be deemed incidental to the enjoyment of a dwelling house, the principle of the use is considered to be acceptable here. In regard to the impact on residential amenity, it is likely that if no restriction was placed on the permission, that there may be some, perhaps significant, impact on the residential amenity of neighbours from noise and disturbance from comings and goings. A condition limiting the use to no more than 8 customers per day and an hours restriction of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday will help to mitigate any significant harm to the residential amenity of neighbours. The use itself will not be noisy, but the comings and goings could be and should be made acceptable by limiting the use with these planning conditions. In regard to the impact on visual amenity, there are no exterior changes proposed with this application, and as such, it is considered that there would be no adverse impact on the visual amenity of the area. Warwickshire County Council Highways Authority have been consulted on the application and have responded with a no objection to the scheme. They have requested a condition which would mean that the use would be solely for a physiotherapy use and not any other use within the D category, which is considered acceptable and is therefore recommended. They also requested a condition that links this permission to the current applicant and that the use will be removed if and when they moved on. This, however, is not considered to be acceptable. Sorry, gone to the wrong. In regard to car parking, the Council's Car Parking Standards Guide 2003 now carries only very minimal weight. The standards within this document in relation to D1 uses, such as this, expressed a maximum of 2 spaces per consulting room. There are 2 spaces within the garage on site, and there are space for another 2 cars to be parked on the road immediately in front of the garage if one ignores the I bar marking. Given that the previous standards were maximum standards and that they no longer carry any significant weight, it is considered that the parking proposed here would be sufficient for this use and that refusal on these grounds may be considered unreasonable by an inspector. Some objectors raised issues with information on the application forms, although this is acceptable in planning terms. The proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Darren. Councillor Julie Jackson.
For the opportunity to speak to your meeting this evening. I asked for this application to come before committee following representation from residents, and I will be expressing to committee these views. I think that concerns have been heightened by the submission of a second, but I appreciate separate planning application at the same site to be considered at some stage in the future. However, I am cognizant of the fact that committee has to consider the application before them this evening on its individual merits. Riversley Road is a high-density residential area where parking is always at a premium. I am often told people park here and walk into the town to work or shop. Indeed, not that long ago, the road itself was made one way to assist with ongoing traffic concerns. As one of the 2 borough councillors for this area, I can attest to the number of times local people express concerns at various meetings in this regard. Under the section from officers, I note the points made about the principle of development and reference to other Class D uses in the area. For any member who may not be familiar with the area, I can state that Red Roofs has its own car park, as does the Old Mill Surgery. We all know that on occasions appointments do overrun for a whole variety of reasons, and accordingly I feel the need for car parking spaces here is essential. As I understand it, there are 2 car parking spaces within the garages, and I am presuming the other 2 on-road ones are those with the I white line marking in front of said garages. This would entail some extra manoeuvring to exit the garages if both spaces were used, far from an ideal solution. From my layperson's perspective, the only spaces that make this proposal have any easy parking are those situated off-road, i.e. the garages, and I do feel in light of the high-density residential nature of this area and the existing problems with parking, that these 2 spaces could form part of the schedule of conditions. I would respectfully ask if committee may consider whether this is appropriate. Is it possible to ask that at least 1 space here be reserved for customers? I note the condition at 2 relates to the site layout, but it makes no mention of the actual use of the garages. The condition relating to hours of use is imperative to ensure the quality of life for existing residents is not impacted negatively. This is justified in the response of the Highway Authority. In regard to condition 4, I have some concern about how this could be monitored. I appreciate that the hours of operation give an 8-hour treatment period and hence working on hourly appointments. This at face value seems to make sense. However,
just finish your words and then.
However, do all appointments need 1 hour? Chair, I note the thing about Class D and not permitting other uses, but I would draw committee's attention to the temporary 2-year ways you can change Class
Okay,
D
I'm
to
going
A1,
to stop you there,
etc.
Councillor.
Thank you,
Are there any points of conduct?
Just a quick one. I vote one way now.
Riversley Road.
Cut short by the timer, you were saying something. Do you want to just continue that? It sounded quite relevant.
If you look at your class schedule at the end of your agenda, you will note D1 non-residential institutions, and in the box along it says temporary permitted change 2 years to A1, A2, A3. I would like committee to consider rescinding those changes because, you know, to have shops, hot food takeaways, financial and professional services would increase the parking problems.
I think there's a little conflab going on about that issue at the moment. Is it another point of clarification?
Yes, actually.
Carry on.
Conditions that you are proposing that we should put in as an amendment, Councillor?
The application. I would like to ask that the temporary changes as a planning officer, I'm sure you will get advice, actually do not allow temporary change for 2 years to A1, A2, A3 and B1, and that you do consider making one of the garage spaces for customer use only.
Are there any other points of clarification? No? At this point, do you want to come back in on anything?
That is possible to condition. The current condition suggested says that no other use other than a physiotherapy use. But we could reword the condition to include the temporary change as well. It could be removed as well, if committee were minded to.
Okay, thank you. The recommendation in front of us is to grant planning permission, subject to the conditions printed. From the chair to enable debate to take place. Oh, I'm ever so sorry. Getting carried away with myself. Mr. Liggins. I do. Yeah, it's the same case with me usually as well. Do you want to press your button? That's it.
I wanted to say, but the other thing I want to point out is that there are 12 disabled parking boxes in Riversley Road. And, you know, sometimes when we do our shopping, we have to park on Red Roof Surgery car park until everyone comes and collects their cars at going home time. And we can only park after 5:30 by our own home. So, you know, this is something else I just wanted to add. That's all, really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any... Mr. Ash Patel.
Committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to attend and speak today. I hope you have had time to read my summary of objections and resolutions sent prior. I would like to start by saying not only will I be a resident of Riversley Road, but I've also grown up within the stone's throw of Riversley Road. I have family, elders and friends who live in this road, and my doctors is on the road as well. It is for this reason I understand the concerns of the residents regarding the parking issue, and for the same reason I have made it my mission to ensure my application will have no significant effect on my neighbours. This will be a residential property, as I will be living there with my family. The plan proposes a very small scale therapy room, which will take only half a space of a garage. The other half will be used as vehicle storage and access. I will see a maximum of 8 clients in one day, Monday to Friday, usual working hours, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, so that I'm working and ensuring it's off-peak times. The format of the property seen in the picture shows that I have enough space to park for 2 cars to park outside the garage. These spaces are accesses for the garages, so it's not a public parking space. This is ideal as one space can be used for one of my clients. If anybody wanted to park there, that would be coming to me by car. I am the only practitioner there. I have no employees. I can only treat one patient at any one time. I allow about 20 minutes to half an hour in between patients, which is mandatory for me, to allow, and that's ample time for a patient to leave and the next to arrive. This will not be a constant, as some days I'll only have 2 or 3 clients. This means there'll only ever be one space occupied if the client is driving to the venue, and if that's only at any one time. This is no different for if I had a family member or a resident visiting my home. To reinforce, if a client does arrive by car, they will occupy for a very short period of time. One of the 2 spaces were allocated in the property, which form a drop curb access for the entrance of the garages. There is no other parking space in the street, which I class as, I say, public or on-road parking space in the street, will be used by anyone visiting my house or the clinic. I will have no members of staff, I've already said, so that wouldn't put any pressure on the parking. The majority of my clients are local, so they do drive to see me. The majority of my clients plan their visit with shopping when parking in town, so walk to my premises, thus putting money back into the borough. The majority of my clients visit the clinic at the end of their running training session to receive treatment, and then they leave. This means that they actually run or cycle to see me most times. The main objections raised, I understand, are to relate to the highway safety. Any parking issues, accident increased risk, parking distances, traffic flow, pedestrian accesses, including disability accesses, manoeuvring, all things that an independent highways engineer from Warwickshire County Council has taken into consideration when the site was assessed, and they have deemed no objections to my application. I would like you to strongly take this independent expert opinion into consideration. I've also received recommendation from the planning department, and I've met the criteria for impact on residential amenity, impact on visual amenity, and impact on safety.
Thank you, Mr. Pad. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Are there any points of clarification? No? Mr. Irfan Mamaji.
I too am a resident of Riversley Road, but I just felt compelled to speak, only because I too share the pain of my fellow residents. I completely sympathise. But I just felt it was unfair to penalise an aspiring young person from achieving something that he's planned to do. So some of the points I wanted to make was that of the objection letters, a lot of the regulatory, environmental, traffic surveys and so forth have all been completed. There is one outstanding item which we're discussing is parking, and parking I don't feel is unfair to be labelled against him. However, I do think that the powers that be, if they enforce the permit only, that would make it a fairer system for everybody at all, and I'm sure we'd all welcome that. But also the nature of the building, he's going to live there. You know, it's where his place is going to live. One of the garages will be still used with the drop curb. The other will be used as a practice. But he did say there's 20 minutes in between each appointment. Plenty of time while he does his medical notes, grabs a cup of tea, goes to use the facilities for somebody to come in and out of that one place outside the garage. So I do feel it's kind of tarring the whole street in the same brush, and I don't think he should be penalised for that. And I guess if anyone's wondering why this building, why not? If you're living on top, it makes sense to cut costs below. For those that are using iPhones, Steve Jobs once started his company from the back of his garage. I'm not saying he's going to be that successful, but my point is that I just want his education. He's a local lad. He's gone through Queen's School, Manor Park School, Chilverscote, and he leaves a stone throw away. For me, I'm thinking of my kids, your kids, grandchildren. I wouldn't want them to go. I'd be proud of them if they went through this route. If they then come back and say they were stopped on a technicality, I'd be quite annoyed about that. But however, I do therefore urge the council to uphold the decision you made, allow the process to continue with those conditions that you guys have mentioned. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. No? Darren, anything to come back at this point? Right, apologies for nearly stopping people from speaking then. Once again, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation which is to grant planning permission? Is that seconded? Yeah. Any member? Councillor Condacour.
Yeah, difficult street, but we can't sort of penalise one business. We've got the doctors, surgeons, etc. So with these conditions, I'm fairly happy that we're letting someone have a business, There's mention of a second planning application. I think we deal with that separately. And yeah, I can't see how we can turn it down without... Yeah, I think we need to sort out the parking with the county council and the road traffic orders. I don't see that should stop this business working.
Ian Lloyd, did I say? Yeah, and Councillor Tandy, okay.
The officer's comments on some of the conditions that Councillor Jackson requested on, from what I can say, making it a sole use, making it only that use. So if the individual then decided on another use within that ban, he would have to come back to planning committee. And with the parking that's just been mentioned, I'd be happy to vote for it as long as those conditions were in place.
Yeah, just so we've got it right. Councillor Jackson could only suggest to the committee.
To put it through, then I would like to propose that we include those conditions.
On what we were there. Just before I get a second, we'll be clear on the words.
The condition that we're recommending currently says that the use hereby permitted shall not be used for any purpose other than a physiotherapy treatment, and no other uses within the D1 use class of the Town Country Planning Act. We could add into that condition, just to make it completely watertight, that those temporary uses are also removed from the use classes order. It's sort of implied by saying no other than a physiotherapy treatment room, but we're happy to. That would be acceptable.
Okay, and was there a further point about the car parking space? Right, what exactly was that there'd be a condition that one space
in the garage be allocated for customers?
Yeah, that condition would be acceptable too if you were minded to add that on.
Okay, so are you proposing those conditions?
Chair, before we do that, can I...
No. Does somebody want... Okay, then. It's been moved and seconded that we amend that condition and include the bit about the car parking. I'm happy for people to speak on that and for people to agree that it's part of what we're discussing. You were raising something on that point, so I'm going to bring you in now, Councillor Tromans.
That we add to that amendment by specifying that it needs to be a qualified and registered physiotherapist, because people could say, I'm doing physiotherapy from here, but it could be an unqualified person the next day. Can we put that in, that it must be a qualified and registered physiotherapist?
It's a good question. I'm not sure it's a planning thing, but have a stab at it.
Surely we can condition
For what reason? What would you... We have to provide reasons for conditions, so what...
Because we don't want unqualified people practising their covering for holidays, things like that.
It's not...
I think it would be for the customers doing their research on who they want to treat them. I don't think it's a planning thing. Councillor Tandy?
As the county councillor for the area, each county council, when there is a planning application coming through, are sent the information and the county council's highways response. And initially, the highway response to this application was no objection. Subsequently, I assume because of discussions that had been held with different officers, that was changed to no objection. Riversley Road is a bad road. It is now one way, but there is still tremendous amount of parking down there. And Councillor Jackson is absolutely right that people do park there instead of park there to go into town, and people park there when they work in the town as well. However, I can see the difficulty of refusing this objection, Chair, and on the basis that I have seconded all the conditions that I have just seconded are put into place, then I will support this proposal, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. In that case, you've done, Darren, yeah, you've accepted that. So, with the alteration to the condition, I'll move to the vote which has been proposed. It includes the one parking space and the other aspect of it, yeah. So the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions and the altered conditions. All those in favour of that? Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, so that's approved without... Okay, if we can move back to item number 2 then, please. Land off Eastborough Way. Whenever you're ready, Darren. Thank you. Yeah, it's okay. All right.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for residential development of up to 360 dwellings and vehicular access off Heart of England Way, including open space, footpaths, landscaping and other infrastructure. It is an outline application with access also being considered at this stage. Members will recall that this application was presented to committee on the 1st of November 2016 and it was resolved by committee on that date to grant approval subject to conditions in a legal agreement. It was during the drafting of this legal agreement that it was noticed that an additional fee, which was not requested or necessary, was included in both the presentation to committee and the written agenda. This included an additional £91,974 for play and open space, which was accidentally included in the request listed on the agenda and mentioned verbally. This amount is not necessary as part of the play and open space contributions, however, it was incorrectly included. The application is being brought back to committee to inform members that the total contribution being requested for play and open space is £398,670.42, and it is pertinent to mention that this is not the applicant seeking a reduction in obligations, but merely to rectify an incorrect figure being reported to committee last time the application was considered. The recommendation is, as it was previously, one of approval subject to conditions and a legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any member? Missed out my normal thing.
Can I do a point of order, though, please, Chair?
You can try.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think that we should be considering this as a planning application. This is just an item for the committee to note. There is no planning decision to be made here. That's already happened. It's just us noting that there was an incorrect calculation that's now been rectified. The fact that Section 106 is being charged for play in open spaces was a material consideration maybe for the planning committee, but the fact that the formula was just miscalculated, that isn't, I understand it, grounds to agree or disagree a decision. So we should just be being asked to note this particular amendment to the rectification of the incorrectly calculated figure. Thank you, Chair.
I'll do the correct process, but I'm happy for Darren to respond to that, or equally the legal people.
Well, I will, because I did take legal advice on it before we reported the application back to committee. Normally I would agree with you that we don't want to put applications before you that don't need to be. However, there may be members of this committee that made a decision based on the amount that was there, and as we were incorrect in telling you that amount, it is only fair and reasonable, as I consider it, to report it back to you.
Okay, you happy with that, Wendy? Yeah?
Yes.
The advice must have come from you anyway.
From higher up than Wendy.
Oh, didn't think there was. Okay, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to that legal agreement and the conditions printed? Is that seconded? Seconded. Thank you. Any member? Councillor Condacourt.
Yeah, thank you very much. Taking £100,000 off the amount needs to be paid by the thing, and £500,000 seemed quite a steep amount when we were presented with it. One thing I said the last time this went to committee is we need to get this site so that pedestrians and cyclists can cross the Eastborough Way. And in that condition 13, it says once you've built the 200th house, you'll actually put the pedestrian crossing in. And for those who are unfamiliar with the area, if you look on the back page of the agenda item, it's right slap bang in the middle at the bottom is where the pedestrian crossing is due to go at the 200th house. As the cost of the play and open spaces is down by 100,000, I am suggesting we approve this subject to amending condition 13 to say prior occupancy of the 50th house, the signalised crossing is put in rather than 200th. That will actually enable the pedestrian crossing to be there about 3 years earlier and actually encourage people to walk across the crossing. And if you don't know the area, that underpass takes you out by the Crystal Palace into Attleborough, and they can go to the Pingles, wherever. So it is a really important walking route to make this development sustainable, and waiting for the 200th house is 4 years at 50 houses a year, or could be 6 years wait for that crossing to go in. So I'm trying to bring forward that crossing. Thank you, Chair.
Any other member? No? In which case the recommendation is as printed, which is to grant planning permission. All those in favour? What did you get? Yeah. And against? And abstentions? Okay, so that is approved as well. I believe that's all of the agenda. We don't have any urgent items. Can I thank you for your attendance and declare the meeting closed?